Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast, where the truth will set you free.
Welcome to the Reality Therapy Podcast. I'm here with another great panel today to talk about pornography, and I will let them introduce themselves, starting with Leslie.
Hi, thanks, Ryan. And it's great to see all of you. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce. I am a coach and consultant in Washington State. I also am co-founder and one of the facilitators of a peer support community called Solid Ground. I wear a lot of hats, so do a number of things. I also have a cluttered room full of pottery behind me because I spend a lot of my time making ceramics. And what else? I have a YouTube channel. It's called The Radical Center. I started it a few years ago, and it was a name that was meant ironically because it shouldn't be radical to find yourself in the center, but sometimes it feels that way. And we do a weekly live stream on that channel, as well as a bunch of interviews. But I started it because I wanted to share my concerns about what's happening in the applied psychology field, specifically in the field of counseling, counselor education, how much that field is being impacted by groupthink and authoritarian ideology. So that's been a huge project for me for a while, and I love getting to talk with all the thoughtful people that I get to speak with on that platform. So yourself included, Ryan, and thanks for inviting me today. I don't know. Is that a good enough
And that concludes
intro?
our show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Shall I go next?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm Giff Lasta. I'm the founder of the Reforged Marriage Program, where I help guys who are dealing with low sex in their marriage and just kind of relationship issues really level themselves up. And I'm also the author of The Way of Men with Maids, trying to bring some of that message around masculinity, good male-female dynamics to a little younger audience, kind of bringing game to the church youth group. But I started this whole process actually because Mark Queppet here helped coach me about 8 years ago to quit porn. And that really changed the trajectory of my life, changed where I've gone, set me on the path to unlocking just a lot of power in my marriage. And I couldn't be more grateful for it. So I'm very passionate about this topic, and I think that what Mark calls sexual self-mastery is actually the foundation to all these other pieces. Like if we can get that right, we can build anything.
I'll say I had The Way of Men with Maids right here. It's a phenomenal book.
Awesome. I guess I'll go next since Giff mentioned me. Mark Queppet. I've been a men's coach since 2013 when I was one of the first guys to talk about quitting porn from like a first person perspective online. Since then, I've worked with thousands of guys all over the world and learned a lot, in the trenches with them, quitting my own pornography addiction, helping other guys do the same. And now what I do is I've kind of got two big things. One, on markqueppet.com, I call it the Codex. It's where I've got all my best content. It's being built out and updated at the moment, but I don't want to charge for content anymore. Just kind of open source it to everyone. But then I've got the new Command Center, which is a community for helping guys, develop sexual self-mastery, unleash their potential, and all that kind of stuff, where I work through kind of a full life framework for masculine improvement. Because what I found is that quitting things like porn and whatnot, it's really only about 20% about removing the specific habit. And it's really like 80% about creating a life that you don't want to escape from to begin with. So, that's what I do. Got the pleasure to work with Giff a number of years ago. He's, done phenomenal work, and he's even done some stuff for me, helping coach the content. So he's a great guy, and he's the one who got me, I guess, connected here. So I really appreciate the invite.
Well, I'm excited to have you on my show later, Mark, even though we just met like 10 seconds ago, because that's going to be a good discussion. So my name is Jake Wiskerchen, and I'm in Nevada. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist here, and I own and operate an outpatient counseling agency called Zephyr Wellness. I, like Leslie, also wear several hats, and I'm not going to get into them because verbal resumes are dumb. But I do have two podcasts. One I co-host called Guns and Mental Health, and the other is called Noggin Notes, which is just about mental health. Ryan and Giff have been on those. Leslie was supposed to be on one, but I forgot to follow up with my email. So at some point, we'll get both of you guys on, and we'll talk about this. So I'm excited for this. I'd be completely comfortable just listening to y'all talk because I think it's going to be good. But I have something to contribute in the frame or framework, I guess, of emotional functioning and how pornography erodes our intimacy because we use it as an avoidance tool from actually connecting with people. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But like Mark and Giff, I also I'm used to coming out of the closet, apparently. Came out of the closet as a firearms owning therapist, came out of the closet as a porn addict at one point, and it's been empowering to watch other people basically have permission to acknowledge this soul-sucking habit when I myself acknowledged that I struggled. So the identification through the struggle and then the victory on the other side, I think, is really life-giving. So I'm excited to get into this with you guys. Dad, back to you in the studio, Ryan.
I love that. I think it was Jake and Mark, maybe even Giff, mentioned, use the word addiction or addict. That's a very interesting word. I've gotten into it with Dr. Patrick Lockwood, who's been on here a number of times. I love him, but we have a difference of opinion on this. Can pornography be addicting? And there's him and a number of researchers who will completely deny that there's any addictive nature to this stuff. But I've had a number of guys in AA, at the center where I work, at my church, who will come to me, and the way they are describing it, not me putting my values on them, the way they are describing it is addiction. They even compare it to hard drugs like cocaine. What do you think of this? Like, is pornography addictive question?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick because I've had this conversation with Patrick as well, a friend of the show, Patrick Lockwood, and I get where he's coming from with the, it's not pedantry for pedantry's sake, because we're not being pedantic just to have fun with it. There is a language difference, especially if you're talking in the clinical realm, between addiction and compulsion. And his argument is that it's a compulsion, which I can completely get on board with. That's fine. The problem is the broader populace doesn't possess that nuanced language in its vernacular. So I would just rather lean into than away from
why does he
what
define it
people
as
use it.
What's the technical difference between in his mind?
So Patrick comes from the world of substance abuse, and in their world, by and large, you're going to find a difference of opinion, of course. The neurochemical response based on whether or not you ingest a substance is essentially where the breaking point is between addiction and compulsion. So gambling is not an addiction. Porn is not an addiction. Video games is not an addiction. Those would be considered compulsions by some of these researchers. It's not a hill on which I particularly care to die, but the argument does have merit from a technical angle is all I'm going to say about that. So for me, they're interchangeable.
I think largely a semantic argument. It's semantics. I mean, most people would describe a problem that they're having trouble quitting, that their willpower alone is not enough to overcome. Colloquially, they'd call that addiction. And so I agree with Jake that diagnostically there might be a discrepancy there, but for all intents and purposes, people are describing the sense that they're addicted.
I would argue it's actually like bad to do that though. Like it's kind of like it's like I get technically sure within their field, but the problem is that when they go on the podcasts and they say, "Hey, it's not an addiction," people run with that. They don't run with the technical nuance. It's just something that is then used to deny people's experiences, which is fundamentally the same as addiction. And I think it actually just hurts the conversation, and it's like a lame take. And even if he wants to make that semantic technical distinction, he shouldn't.
Yeah, it's interesting because even throughout the DSM, addiction is not a term that we use. It's like, substance use disorder. So that's like, well, where do the rest of them fall into if I'm going to generate an F code and send it off to insurance so I can get reimbursed, because I have to diagnose you with an illness of some kind. So the authors of the DSM have done a very poor job of evaluating this. And there's a comeuppance on the horizon with social media too. And that's, is it an addiction? It's like, who cares? You're ruining lives. Can we just fix it? So anyway.
I think there's two reasons on the technical aspect why Dr. Lockwood is wrong on this. if you're comparing it, like the difference between addiction and like OCD type compulsions, like checking locks, checking the stove, light switches, things like that. And it's euphoria and withdrawal. So with pornography, you're pursuing a high, you're pursuing a euphoria. If you're checking locks, you're not pursuing a euphoria. And the other one is withdrawal. I've talked to a number of guys with pornography, like I cannot sleep unless I watch pornography. Like those type of like anxiety and these type of like physical, psychological symptoms that you don't see with like OCD in the same way. With OCD, it's a very negative reinforcement. I have these bad thoughts and I make them go away by checking the locks, but there's no euphoria, no withdrawal. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. Also, and there's just like an unnecessary distinction about ingestion too. I mean, like you're ingesting it with your eyes. Like what if they,
Correct.
AI gets to the point where you can flash something on a screen and it creates a brain change similar to like a narcotic high. Or we're going to say, oh, you can't get addicted to that because you didn't put it in your mouth or in your vein. It's just like, I don't know, it just seems like dumb geek stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess I also find it interesting that some of the language around pornography is different than with a lot of content that you would view passively. I mean, we speak of consuming or using porn, which those are the languages of substance use. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but I've always found that striking. It seems like it's an acknowledgement of a deeper relationship with the topic.
For sure.
I've never heard that until now.
And I mean,
That's a
we're
good point.
talking almost always about a connection with masturbation, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
you're rarely just when we're talking about guys who are hooked on it, are just like looking and that's all.
Right,
interesting.
right. Yeah, that's really
And
a good point.
that's gets into brain chemistry, right? An orgasm is an actual like
I
that
think
has a huge
I think I
brain.
was the only person who didn't offer anything porn related in my introduction, so maybe I should do that a little bit. I have two sons who are 14 and 12, and I think about this a lot as they're getting to an age when they're going to start thinking more and more about girls and about sex. And I worry about what they're going to be exposed to online and how they're going to grapple with that as they come of age and deal with their own masculinity, their own sexuality, their own maturity. I had their father and I split up largely because of what I would identify as porn and sex addiction. And this went on for a long time. This went on for all 12 years that we were together. And it culminated in a lot of sexual acting out. So it wasn't just passive pornography use. There were a couple of big discoveries that I made. At one point, it was 3 years into the relationship, and then it was another 8 years later. And that finally ended up dissolving the relationship. And he would escalate through porn to prostitution and to hookups and things like that. And I was so hurt by this. I mean, I can't possibly overstate how devastating this whole process was for me as his partner. But I can step outside of myself and my own experience in that and also see him and see a kid who had some serious family issues when he was young, lost his dad young, and fell into this at a very young age and developed a habit that lasted him through and I don't know how he's doing with it now. I hope he's doing very well with it. We have a cordial relationship. And I think he's made some progress, but I watched him struggle with that. And while there was a betrayal to me, there was also repeated betrayals to himself and an experience of failure in this process of trying to cleanse himself of something that he felt a lot of shame around and a lot of difficulty with. And I'm not looking at him as a pure victim, but I'm also not looking at him as somebody who was evil for falling into this, because I think it's it's an incredibly seductive product. And the product, I think it's important to identify what it is. And I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. But people will often say porn isn't prostitution, but it quite literally is. The word pornography etymologically means depictions of prostitution. Pornographia. It is prostitution materials. It is a masturbation aid that's produced by a producer and a supplier, that's your pimp, of your prostitutes, that's the women and men that are in the imagery, for the John, who's the end user. I think it's pretty plain to see that what you're dealing with is a virtual version of prostitution when you're engaging with it. And it's incredibly powerful for a lot of people. I'll stop talking now because I've said enough. I don't want to lecture you guys. I'm sure you guys could write books on this stuff. So I just thought I'd offer a slight introduction to my own experience with it, my own personal experience, and then I have my graduate school experience in mental health, looking at how the mental health industry views sex and sexuality right now, which I think there's a lot to be said about that, and what we're seeing culturally. And since the tube sites and since streaming online porn became available, how much that's changed the picture of relationships of men and women, of optimism versus pessimism about the prospects that we have in relationships nowadays. I just think there's a tremendous amount to be said about that. And I'll stop talking and let you guys give your thoughts.
Well, Leslie, I feel horrible about like what you went through. I hear stories like that all the time, and that shit hurts. Like I feel sad for you, what you went through, what your kids went through, and I feel sad for what your ex-husband went through around this. And it's always interesting getting the female's perspective on this because, from your perspective, like he was cheating on you. Even if it, say you didn't escalate to real life encounters, you defined it's prostitution. It's like he went to a prostitute, and technically you're not wrong. I agree with you, but the thing that a lot of women miss, particularly because of how it hits them emotionally, I think, and I'm not saying you specifically miss this, but I think a lot of women do, is that a man doesn't see it that way. Typically, especially if he started young, like a guy, like for a guy who uses porn, it's really not about sex. Like it's not about purely a sexual impulse. What it is a drug. It's a way for him to medicate unmet desires inside of himself, whether it's a desire for, freedom from stress, a desire for, feeling of control, a feeling of value, etc. And like, it's almost like he's carved out this little separate space in his mind. It's like, I call it the split mind, where you actually got your normal self, and you got this little guy who shows up when no one else is looking. And you train yourself on that since you're young. You start masturbating to Sears catalogs or whatever, and then, it progresses from there. But like all the while, you're building up this little sub-personality that isn't actually connected to who you really are. And so I've had to actually coach women around this and help them understand that, like, this isn't designed to be like it isn't like them saying you're not enough and all these kinds of things. It's really about them. It's about them and their own deficiencies. And, it's just their drug. It's their coping mechanism. That's the way I see it. And at the same time, it's what you feel, you're hurt from it. The fact that it is prostitution, that's all real too. And so of course there's going to be an incredibly strong emotional reaction to it. And it's actually because of this, deeply hurtful component, which is why I recommend that men are not using their wives as accountability partners, that men do not lean heavily on their wife in this issue. And in fact, I recommend the woman to give their man some space, assuming he's getting proper help, because otherwise, like, her tendency is to kind of like hover over his shoulder, try and control him, try and force him to be accountable. But the problem is, even if that works, she then constantly is carrying around this feeling of like, it's my job to keep him clean, which is an incredibly unhealthy, relationship dynamic. And also it doesn't work because the man, he's got to want to get clean for himself, not just for his wife, for his kids, etc. So it becomes a whole big messy sort of thing. But, appreciate you sharing.
Oh, I agree so much with so many of those points that you just made. I mean, the accountability piece as well. That's well stated. That was something that I emphasized over and over in the process with him, was that I don't want to have, please do not, I'm not going to get a tracker on your phone. Don't hand that over to me. We're not changing this relationship to mother-son. That's
Right.
not the right dynamic. You need to do this for you. And all I'm asking is that we can talk about it maturely when it does come up, that we can have an emotionally open conversation about it. But I think, to your point about the split brain, I really like the way that you said that, and it resonates with what, in my personal experience, what my ex-husband spoke about in his experience. One of the things that I'm remarried, and when I met my current husband and we started beginning a relationship together, I said, I just want to be clear. I won't have a relationship with anybody where there's pornography involved. And it's fine. I'm not going to police that about you. I'm just going to let you know that about me. That's one of my boundaries, that if you have a relationship with porn, I'll be your friend, but we won't go further into a relationship. And we had a lot of conversations about it. And he asked me for my thoughts on it, why I was so opposed to it. I gave him some of my thoughts, and he said, well, that's not a really compelling case for a man, and kind of challenged me to come up with better arguments if I wanted to appeal to men around this issue. And I think one of the points of, I guess, discrepancy or division was around this. For instance, it's easy to talk in terms of personal anecdote because it's available. And with my ex-husband, when I first found out that he was engaging in a lot of this stuff, from porn all the way to actual encounters with people, I was really hurt about it on many levels and horrified on many levels. But one of them was just, you're spending a lot of time and energy looking at and engaging with other women. And his response was, they're not women. That's not women. That's porn. And Ryan, I see your face. This was his kind of doing the split brain thing. He's thinking of it. It was a substance to him. It was not a bunch of women. And this is where, when I spoke with my husband now about this at the time, I think he also didn't really resonate with my categorization of it as it's women. I suspect, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this, because I want to get more thoughts on, especially men's thoughts on this.
Yeah,
There's a split between, you don't see the women in porn as real women, partly because it's digital and there's a substance involved there, but also because there's a dehumanization and a separation of those people and what they're doing from what the women that you respect and love would do and are. I think that there's a sort of Madonna whore thing that happens here. And so I'll just put that out there, and I'll stop talking. Giff?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that, because that sort of dovetails into both my story and my work, and then Mark can add what he wants to. But like, I think that's absolutely true, that the guy does not see these in the same category as like women in his real life. And that's because he's not engaging with them in that mode of operation, right? And so a lot of what porn is, I love one of Mark's taglines is, quitting porn is the rite of passage of the modern man. And if you have been looking at porn since puberty, like I had, that is absolutely true. In quitting it, what you're doing is you're going through that whole rite of passage of learning how to be a man around your own sexuality, how to integrate, you talk about the Madonna whore complex, how to integrate that like masculine fire, that sort of those sort of sexual aggressive instincts in like a healthy way into just a virile masculine way of living. And then learning how that engages with real women. What you get in porn, and what the guy is experiencing, though he may not be able to articulate it, is he's getting the fantasy of having already done that. And so it's like, I'm having the experience of being able to look and say, oh, tonight I want you and you and you. Nah, not you and you, right? Who got to do that in all of human history? Who had that experience?
Kings.
Genghis Khan and King Solomon, right? Those guys who were at the very top of the food chain. And so what you're saying to your primal brain when you're doing that, and this is a kid, right? This is like a kid going through puberty. What you're saying is, well done, buddy. You've conquered the world. Your seed is going to spread everywhere. Here, we'll bring in more for your harem. Everything's doing great, when it's not. When your life isn't great at all, but you're having that feeling, you're escaping into that fantasy. And putting that fantasy aside, having to fully adopt, like, I'm going to learn how to embrace hard things. I'm going to go on the hero's journey, and I'm going to learn how to engage all of that with women. That's the path out. but it involves putting that aside. And so it's not necessarily, oh, you monster, you're not seeing women as real women. It's like you're not engaged with your real sexuality. You've taken all of that and put it in the porn bucket. You're not engaging with all of yourself when you're doing that. So that was my experience. And that getting out of that springboarded me on this whole journey of teaching men how to engage well with their wives in their marriage.
Yeah, I think Giff said that all really well. And one of the ways that like the best definition that I have for porn is that it's a virtual status. And there's I came across the work of a woman named Dr. Loretta Bruning, and she has an incredible book called I Mammal. And the reason why it was so impactful to me is because, you know, the conversation around porn and stuff like this is usually centered around dopamine, right? But her whole conversation is about serotonin. And serotonin is really the status neurochemical. Maybe some of you guys are familiar with Jordan Peterson's famous lobster talk, where it's like, you know, one lobster beats another, it releases serotonin, he gets all puffed up and whatnot. And I think this is an implicit part of why guys are hooked on porn, and it's why guys don't see porn, you know, the women in them as actual women. It's because what they're doing is like, yes, there is a sexual component, like what Giff talks about. And like you know, as a man, you need to learn to figure out where does your sexual energy actually go. But there's a whole, like, I would say that's not even the bulk of what keeps guys from quitting porn. All right. It's like, you've got three pieces. You've got the chemical aspect, which is just like dealing with the dopamine withdrawal and, you know, those kind of like cravings. You've got the sexual component, but really the bulk of it is all about status, right? Because like when a guy starts using porn when he's young, it's usually because he's horny and curious. Okay. He's got these urges running through him. He's got his testosterone pumping for the first time, and, you know, porn feels good and it's exciting. But as he does that, he'll have other experiences in his life where like, maybe he didn't, you know, he failed a test, or he got rejected by a friend group, or his parents yelled at him, or whatever. And then he uses porn, he jerks off, and he feels better. He feels, I don't worry about that anymore. And then he does it again and again and again. And what ends up happening is that men actually become disconnected from their emotions because they train their brain. It's like, whenever I get a certain feeling, like maybe it's stress or worry or anxiety, which are all related to status or fear, like losing status or being low status, all those feelings, whenever one of them comes up, you train your brain to think, oh, the antidote to this is porn. And so at a certain point, you stop even feeling those emotions and you just feel porn cravings. Like, one of the big things that I've seen happen with guys is they come to me, they're like, oh, I'm just so horny. My sex drive is just so high. And the reality is, it's not. They're not having sexual desires. That's not what a porn craving is. What they're having is these other emotions that then porn allows them to step into this fantasy world where they're high status and none of these problems matter. And it just makes that core issue disappear. So like, when you're operating in that level, it has nothing to do with the actual women on the screen. And it's why guys don't even process it like that. They're popping a pill. They're popping a pill, and they're getting transported to their little Genghis Khan fantasy that pleases their primal brain and releases the neurochemicals that make them feel good.
That is so wild. Giff, I heard you a few weeks ago on X say that porn is fundamentally a status fantasy, and it's just changed how I view the whole thing. Like, I can imagine from Leslie's perspective or from the female perspective, what an intense sense of betrayal you'd be feeling. But from the male's perspective, it's like that woman I'm looking at on screen is almost incidental. That's like a means to an end. And the end is me seeing myself as someone who has value, someone who's wanted and desirable and lovable. I'm important. I have worth. And like, the porn is a means to that end. And kind of understanding that puts it in a whole different perspective.
They're
I
like a
th-
trophy. It's like when
I
guys
think
feel like not good enough, they're like an empty trophy case, and they're just
Mhm.
looking for something to stuff that hole. And a beautiful woman sexually validating you is biologically just naturally an incredible trophy to put in there. And it feels good. And like, yeah, that's the mechanic at play.
And I think it ties in. I think that those two things are intertwined. The way that to know that your partner can use people as a means to an end is part of the betrayal, because you are also being used, and you are finding out that this person has less capacity for human empathy and connection than you believed in this relationship. That's a component of that betrayal. It's a betrayal of what you believed about this person that you've united in relationship with. And so there are levels of betrayal here. It's not just about sexual fidelity. It's about emotional capacity. And so I think what you're saying about status is really important. And I think often of my husband's statements about how my arguments aren't going to appeal to men. He's so there's a different argument that you need to use if you want men to agree with what you're saying. But at the end of the day, I do think it's important to see the people that are involved in this, and the people who are making that content. They are. I just looked at some stats, and I'm not going to try to regurgitate them, but the percentage of people who perform in porn or go into sex work who come from really sad child abuse backgrounds, fatherless homes, tremendously emotionally and socially disadvantaged people that go on to do that kind of work. This is kind of that, that hurt people trope. This is sociopathic people using hurt people to hurt people. You are exploiting male sexuality through exposure to this product, this whatever you want to call it, and you're exploiting female and male sexuality in the making of this product. And somebody is laughing all the way to the bank. So but there are actual people and victims who are victimizing themselves and through exploitation and being exploited. And I think it's important to remember that.
It is, but I want to push back a little bit on that.
Okay, go ahead.
Because if you lead with that, the best you're going to get, granted, some people will have kind of a come to Jesus moment where they recognize, oh my gosh, this thing is messed up. But the problem is that only affects, remember I said they got a split mind? It only affects the conscious part of them. And when you just keep hammering home how bad this is, you're not addressing the part that's over here that's been split off. And when you say stuff like, the betrayal of, I thought his emotional capacity was one thing, but look at him and look at the horrible stuff he's doing and participating in. All you're doing, is you're just making that guy feel bad. He is the other part too. The other part is still really there. The emotional capacity and goodness in him, that is real. It's just that there's also this other split part that he doesn't have control of and isn't probably even consciously aware of and is likely hates it. Okay. And so it's when you if you talking about the horrors of porn and things like that, I think it is absolutely important because it's absolutely true. And that's good for raising awareness in general. But when it comes to actually reaching guys and helping them, that stuff's not useful at all. All it does is make them feel like shit and make them want to escape more. And guess what? It just triggers that other part of them to want to use porn to feel better.
I can see that. I don't disagree with that.
I don't like feeling like a piece of shit. What do I do to escape things I don't like feeling?
Yeah. I agree with you. I agree. I think that that's a good point. And I think it's hard to reconcile some of these things because the experience on the other end of knowing that your partner was using prostitutes or was spending a great deal of his time engaging with prostitution. I mean, if you told somebody, one of the things I like to do every day is watch prostitutes have sex. I just do that every day. That's a big part of my life I don't go to the gym every day, but every day I watch prostitutes have sex. So finding out that is the person that you're raising your children with, that is part of the betrayal. It's not just you looked at other women or I feel there's another layer of the betrayal. And I think it's important to acknowledge that as well. But I do agree with you, Mark, that it's not necessarily useful to beat somebody over the head with that when they already have a shame issue.
Well, they do need to address it for sure. If you heal the split mind, it's you got to get all the truth on the table. So they must confront what you're talking about at some point. But usually that's going to be further down in the process. That's not going to be what you hook them in with and motivate them with typically. That's
is this Maslow's hierarchy of porn recovery?
It's more just internet marketing.
well, but there's also the capacity. You're saying he doesn't have the capacity to feel those emotions. Well, he does. The emotions are just all siphoned off into this. And he doesn't have access to part of himself. right? And so in being built up into that, that really is the path of manhood. And I gotta say, and I don't say this to be prescriptive. I mean, I think every woman who's going through this with her man needs to be completely honest. Like, that's just about what she's feeling and how she's encountering it. I do appreciate when I had a conversation with my wife, having quit, having gone through all of this. Um, I looked at her and I said, "Honey, do you feel that I've been unfaithful to you?" And she sort of looked. She thought about it for a little while, put her head up, and she said, "No, I feel like I've been like you gave me 15 years of life with a boy and not a man." And it's and that and she had said before, she said, "I want a refund. I want those 15 years back. Give them to me." And I was able to receive that actually as a backhanded compliment, right? Because it was it was pain and it was grief coming forth for the first time, but it was also an affirmation that the way I was now was different. And what I was able to say to her was, "Honey, I can't give those 15 years back. I wish I could. I wish I could, but I can damn well make the next 15 years all they should have been and more. And that's what I'm going to do if you'll have me." But it was a more honest. I mean, I may as a man who recovered from porn have sort of a bit of a bonus in this, that I have a wife whose emotional experience lines up with mine a little more. But that is the experience of it, that I had all these disparate parts of me that only now have been brought together into something that can actually live the life of a man and give you that sort of emotional comfort and sympathy mixed with strength, mixed with virility, that you have a right to in a man, right? And so I'm happy to finally be able to do that. But I do kind of have this feeling, and it's only sort of half true, because what you say about prostitution is technically true. But there is part of me that wants to say to guys who haven't quit porn yet, who are like, "Oh, we're so bad. We're adulterous. Oh, woe is us." And I'm like, "Look, guys, you don't have the capacity for grown-up sexual sin yet. You guys aren't men yet. I want to get you to the point where you can actually commit sexual sin. First, you got to grow up, and then you have to own this power, and then there's a choice about how you're going to use it."
I
So,
think so much of this parallels so closely to chemical drug addiction. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict, and there was a number of times when I'd just be so distraught, even to the point of crying, sitting outside of a liquor store or outside of my drug dealer's house saying, "I don't want to go in," knowing that I'm going to, and nothing's going to change that. And it seems like there's so many similar feelings around pornography, even if, like, gosh, I don't want to hurt my family. I really don't want to betray my wife. I want to do the right thing. And knowing, like, I can't stop this.
and I think part and parcel with that was something I realized, I think through Mark's teaching, was that don't apologize to her about it. Apologize maybe twice. Apologize once for not taking the journey of quitting porn seriously when you finally decided to take it seriously. You can apologize then, and you can apologize in the end once you have actually quit and become a man. You apologize for those years that you gave her that you didn't. But you don't come to her for comfort over and over. "I'm sorry for not being who I should be." She can't absolve you of that. Right. And it's kind of I mean, it's demeaning to her. And so there's some of the ways that we've taught guys to think about this and engage with their wives ends up kind of sticking a knife into her over and over.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, like what you described, like that feeling of like, I don't want to do this, but I know I'm going to do it anyway. That issue is kind of like what drives my work here. Like that's solving that issue is a core part of like my personal life vocation, is that guys don't know what to do. Like it's not obvious how to handle a situation like that. Like what buttons are you supposed to press in your head and your heart in order to actually create a shift in those moments? And as long as you got that split mind, most guys, they just think they have to beat that part up. They think they have to defeat it. They got to white knuckle through it. Other people think they just need to go sit in therapy for hours and like talk about shit. And it's like, none of that's accurate. the only way to do it is to understand like what your true desires are and learn how to act on them. Because most people, when they're trying to like quit, they're just fighting themselves constantly. It's just like they don't know how to understand what they're really looking for and honor that. And so like, yeah, what you just, the reason I'm going off on this is just because, you know, you painted that picture, and I've seen so many guys where they're just like, yep, I hit the point of no return, and I guess, you know, one thing led to another and I relapsed. And it's like, there is no point of no return. That only exists if you don't know what to do. And so like, that's what I care about, is like making sure that people understand, here's exactly what you do if you want to overcome this thing.
I remember, Mark, I think the first time that it really clicked for me was when I was quitting under your guidance, and I had a porn craving. It was really strong, and I wanted to go jerk off. And it was, I think it was at work, right? And I just wanted to run to the bathroom, pull out my phone or whatever. And I had heard what you said about you're actually wanting something else. You're in this craving. You're actually repressing your own desire. And for the longest time, I was like, no, I think what I want is boobs. I really think that's what I want. I know you think maybe I want Jesus or something right now, but no, pretty sure it's the boobs. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to sit with this. And I sat with it. It's like, well, if I can't look at porn, what do I do? Well, I'll tell you what I'll do is I've got this situation here that's not being resolved at work. And these two guys, it's not resolved because these two guys who are not getting along, blew up the last time, and I'm going to have to get them, and I'm going to have to like arrange for a meeting, and I'm going to have to do this, and I can't do. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, oh, like I am repressing my own desire to get my work in a good place because it's hard and it's stressful and it's not clear, and I don't want to think about it. And that's what was going on. And I was completely clueless. All I thought was, really want to look at some boobs.
So it had
Right.
become a stress management coping mechanism, and that's when you really realized it.
Right. Well, and beyond even just stress management, like the repression of my own desires, repression of even the awareness of them. Like what he says is right. It short circuits it, and you don't even experience it as stress that I have to cope with. You just think, oh, I'm horny. And it was just like, boom, the lights went off.
And what I think makes like porn is unique in a number of ways. Like I think it's one of the most insidious addictions, and it's not as acutely damaging as like, you know, heroin or meth or anything like that. I'm not going to pretend like it is. But what's screwed up about it is multiple things. Like one is everyone's got the drug dealer in their pocket, right? But then additionally, like it's not serious enough that you're going to ship yourself away to some treatment center where they can just manage your situation and, you know, put you in a controlled environment and solve it, you know, with you lockstep. And then that means that it's on you, generally speaking. And that gets really tricky because there's a lot of nuances to it. Like it's not just a substance, it's also tied into your biological urges. And so because of that, there's like different kinds of things you're going to deal with. And it's different depending on where you're at, even in your streak. Like, for example, in the first 2 weeks, it's all about buy-in and having a plan for dealing with chemical urges. After that, weeks 3 to 6, that's where all of the repressed emotions start bubbling up. All right. And then you got to figure out, oh shit, like I'm lonely, or oh, I don't like my job, or oh, me and my wife have a horrible connection, or whatever. And that becomes its own big thing. And then after you get past week 6, you think you're in the clear, but you still have this greased chute in your brain where you can fall back into porn instantly. And what you need then is a system to hold yourself accountable without burning yourself out. And so like, it's kind of like this moving target that's always available. It only takes one moment of weakness until you reach a certain point and your brain's kind of built up a buffer to it. And, you know, there's very little good support out there for anyone looking to solve this thing. You just get basic platitudes like go do push-ups or, you know, pray harder. And these things just don't work. Like I've had guys come to me, they're like, yeah, I was in a bunch of men's groups. I was like in these religious ones, and it basically just became like a pity party for everyone to make themselves feel better for relapsing. Like even the leaders were relapsing. And it's like, it doesn't need to be this way. It's a huge tragedy because it's this silent killer that not only like attacks the individual, but it erodes the marriage, which erodes the family, which the whole society is built upon. And like I see like, you know, so much of the it's like I constantly wonder, like, what would the world look like if guys weren't going home beating off to porn like every day? Like, what kind of stuff would be solved? You know, how many issues would like be fixed in the world? How many new inventions would we have? It's just the drain on the capacity of the human race that porn is doing is just unbelievable, and it's only going to get worse and worse and worse because of the advancements of AI and what that's going to bring. Eventually, we're going to get to the point where like porn stars and OnlyFans is almost out of business, and what we're dealing with is just competing AI companies for whoever can create the best custom VR algorithm. It's going to get freaking nuts. It's going to be we're almost like my theory is that we're almost going to diverge into two separate races. We're going to have like people who are like off the insane dopamine drip of porn, and they're gonna be like the most high functioning humans that have ever existed, and then we're gonna have the people who are just like plugged into their USB fleshlights and their little pods and just living like creatures. It's like
it's going to become Wall-E.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
The Matrix.
That presents an interesting turn for our next adventure here, and that is where do you see the future of this going? Because I talked to Megan Holder last night about AI girlfriends and virtual relationships, and you know, porn becoming like AI, like you could like customize it, and it can speak back to you essentially. Where do you see this going? It sounds like very dystopian.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be like it is now, but even worse. You know, if you saw the newest Blade Runner with Ryan Gosling, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone quitting porn. There's a lot of nudity in it, but like basically he has an AI girlfriend, and the whole thing is about him, you know, spoilers, like learns how to come to terms with that and basically become a man. And that's what's going to happen. It's going to be like how porn is already used, but it's going to be more overt. You know, it's going to be your AI girlfriend's going to be your therapist. It's going to be your lover. It's going to be your friend group. It's going to be everything to you. And I think like there's going to have to be a split. Like, heck, I don't even like want to look at social media anymore because I don't even know what's AI and what's not anymore. I have to like go to the comments and like, wait, is this one AI? It's like, oh yeah. And it's like, it's going to get to the point where the internet's just like, I think there's like even a theory in AI where they talk about there's going to be a point where everything prior to the AI evolution or revolution is going to hold more value because moving forward, it's all going to feel so fake. So that's why it's like, I think the internet's going to go smaller. Like a lot of people are going to just get caught up in the slop. And then some, like the people who have some consciousness around them, they're going to funnel themselves off, get in private communities, stay away from algorithmically generated crap. And otherwise, like it's going to just become too addictive and it's going to destroy your life.
And
I'm glad you brought that up.
The silver lining that I like, and I've heard it from Mark before, and it reminds me of a comment that I think a Orthodox Christian monk in Jerusalem said. He was commenting on all the violence and the religious hatred and everything in that place, and he says, "Yes, that is true. If we solve the problems of this city, we will have solved the problems of the world." And I was like, wow, that is such a positive take at a really kind of dark situation. And I think there's a similar thing here in that if we teach men how in the face of all of that, these men obtain sexual self-mastery, these men take charge of their own virility and live life when they have Genghis Khan's harem in their pocket at all times, these are going to be some of the most faithful, powerful men that history has ever seen. And we can be that, and we can build that, and we can even build the path to it and invite people to take it.
That's my my prayer. I've only in the last couple of weeks, I mean, it's been lurking in my head for a while, but in the last couple of weeks specifically, this topic has arisen multiple times. And my theory, which is my prayer and my hope, is that we as human beings who have evolved to this point where the technology has outstripped our evolutionary capacity to intake it, we will just get tired of the artifice. We will no longer want synthesized music, movies, art, food. Like it's just we're going to go back to analog because we're just worn out. And I think we're getting pretty close. But to Mark's point about the bifurcation of the the species, like, yeah, some of those people are going to be irredeemable. And I see this in our political discourse, unfortunately, and I don't want to go that direction, but there's just some people who are they're not coming back because they're in an echo chamber. It's amazing. I totally called this too. I was like, I could just sit here and listen. I don't have to contribute. But I wanted to make a point. Mark and Giff, what is your educational background? You guys didn't do anything in psychology, did you, or mental health? Formally?
I did not. Mine is more technical software.
Yeah. Mark, did you go to school for counseling at all?
I went to school for software engineering, and then I went through coach training. So I'm not like a therapist or anything like that. I do coaching, which is different modality.
I swear this is going to sound like a non sequitur, but it's not. Ryan and Leslie, when you guys were in school, did your professors denigrate life coaches?
Oh, 100%.
Oh,
100%.
yeah. Totally.
Right.
Totally.
Okay. So part of me sitting silent for like 50 minutes was to prove a point to myself, but also to make this point to the audience because I had a hunch and I was right. Okay, Leslie went to school, but she doesn't have a license. Giff didn't go to school. Mark didn't go to school. Ryan just graduated. He's the host. I'm the guy with the license for like 15 years or whatever. Everything you said is something I would have said. It's possible that people can heal each other without having the, vetted from the state, credential, post-nominal letters, whatever. So for the listening audience, if you ever are second guessing whether or not a quote unquote coach, which is what we were told are illegitimate professionals, apparently, don't doubt that. These people are really, really ridiculously smart, and most of them are better than any therapist you could throw a dart at and stick on Psychology Today. So I'm really glad you guys had this conversation. It's really good. I wanted to weigh in with some of my own validations here regarding the point that Leslie was making about how the people in the pornography are damaged. Essentially, they're hurting, right? From my experience, it's a 1-to-1 correlation. They may not all have been sexually abused, but they definitely have parent issues, daddy issues, mommy issues, whatever it may be. And I've been doing this for a minute, right? But for part of that minute, I also endeavored in the sexual and domestic violence arena where we were helping that demographic quite a bit. And I'll tell you, that was the key. That was what woke me up. And I went, oh my God, I'm part of the problem. Because I was the John consuming the product that these hurt people were putting out. And I'm like, I can't contribute to this anymore. I can't be an authentic individual who's helping on one hand and perpetrating the problem on the other. So now it didn't happen overnight, but that was the beginning of the end for my journey down pornography. Interesting that you point out the weeks 3 through 6, Mark, because I think in that time is when it's important to have a substitute, right? Like either you're authentically addressing whatever it is that is pushing you into the escapism, or you are going to unconsciously grab something else like alcohol or cigarettes or something, right? Because from my view, and I teased this at the beginning, is that this hinges on emotional vulnerability. Now, if you watch any of my videos, I teach emotion in a wave. At the beginning of the wave, you're starting to have an emotion. Middle of the wave is when you really lose control. Like you don't get control whether or not you feel something. You just feel it and you have to endure it. And then the end is when your brain learns that it's tolerable, right? So in the middle is vulnerability. You're exposed. You could be whacked. You could be taken advantage of, right? And a lot of people who don't practice vulnerability, they practice escapism, they practice avoidance, they practice bailing out, stuffing down something, right? Bottling up, explaining away, rationalizing, but they don't get vulnerable. If you repeat that pattern over time, it starts to look like emotion is bottomless and you just don't go there with anything ever. And emotions are not like you can toggle switch on a dip switch setting one over the other. It's like if you switch one off, you switch them all off. So then you become emotionally avoidant across the board. You can't feel joy. You can't feel sadness. You don't feel shame, but they persist in the brain on a neurochemical level. So it becomes very, very problematic, not only mentally, but physiologically as well. But here's the thing. Only through vulnerability can you achieve intimacy. And what porn does is it stands in for a proxy intimacy. And there's an adjacent concept here about like letting off a little steam. Neurochemically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, if you indulge in this escapism called pornography and you quote unquote let off a little steam, there's not much pressure left for the actual people in your life. And that's not just your spouse or your mate, it's the attention to all work, your relationships, your commitments to your passions, hobbies, interests, because you're dumping so much into this distraction that there's nothing left, right? And I don't want to overblow that a little bit. Of course, there's stuff left. People still function, but you're not fully present. So I wanted to make that point. And then lastly, I think when we sit here and talk about porn, and I think most people's presumption or conclusion is it's professional. It's there's big lights and cameras and a couch and whatnot. There's way more on Reddit, right? There's way more on OnlyFans, where it's just some people with a cell phone posting, and maybe they're getting paid, maybe they're not, but those people are, I would submit, they have just as big of an avoidance problem. I don't want to call them damaged. I don't want to sound judgmental. There's that too, but man, oh man, that's a big deal. So if
Jake,
if you're not, if you're telling yourself I'm not doing porn because you're not watching the professionals, reconsider that.
I mean, I will say, just to talk about the damage a bit, like one of the guys I've follow occasionally is Sterling Cooper, who's a former male porn star, and he says some things in the masculinity space. He's trying to get into like coaching guys around sex and stuff. What did I learn during that? But he is very deeply repented for his involvement in all that. And one of the things he said one time is when he was at one of these conventions, at the beginning of these porn conventions, they would have this like in memorandum, right, of all of our colleagues who died in the last year. And it's just like the names would just scroll for like 5 minutes. And it's like, and almost all women.
Suicides and drug overdoses.
Yes, suicides and drug overdoses. Just like he says, it destroys. It's not good for men, but it destroys the women. So.
Yeah, I thank you. I'm just so pleased that you invited me to do this, Ryan. I have really enjoyed hearing the three of you fellow panelists talk about your perspectives on this. It's such a deep and important topic, and I think there's so many different angles that need to be addressed. I think that it's hard for women to be the one to tell men, don't use this, because we come off as scolds, and we come off as judgmental. And so I've been really gratified and grateful to see so many men stepping into that space recently and talking to other men and talking about their own experiences with it. And in my own work, I work with couples and families and people who are struggling in marital connection. And I have a lot of compassion for all the parts of this process, for all the people. And I know I've shared some of my own personal anecdotes. I know that's a common thing in these kinds of conversations. We're all coming from where we're coming from with this, because it hits people very personally and almost universally right now in our culture from one angle or another. But I know people might be tempted to fill in a blank here, and I'll just fill that in for you. I didn't leave my ex-husband because of his porn and sex addiction. I did separate from him for a couple of weeks, but I offered to connect and go back to counseling and try to work through it, because my family and my commitment to my family is really important, and it supersedes my own feelings, my own sense of betrayal. We're all flawed people. I'm a flawed person. You marry a flawed person. We have to make room and have some grace for each other to go through the processes of growth individually and together. And I think that I love your story, Giff, about how you and your wife reconnected and that reconciliation. I think that's possible in a lot of circumstances, maybe not all of them, but in many, many circumstances, it seems like it's not possible, but it really is. You can find forgiveness. And I would have found forgiveness in that situation. His story is his to tell, but he was the one who ultimately made the decision that it was too hard to work through the damage that had been done. And he made that call. I do believe that a lot of marriages can be saved after revelations like this. And when you look at the number of men and women who struggle with pornography consumption, It's so high. It's such a prevalent thing in our culture, and it's not cause for any one individual to feel like they're irredeemable because they're struggling with this. There is hope. You can sort through this. You can work through it.
Yeah, Leslie, I want to make a point. If you're a clinician listening to this, I don't care how long you've been practicing. If you're a coach who's trying to get into this field, maybe you don't necessarily work with porn recovery per se, but you're a helper, right? In school, they teach us to be competent and confident in dealing with what, so-called sensitive subjects like suicidal ideation and sexuality and sexual orientation and finances and whatnot. They don't teach us about this, though. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like, let's all be sex positive and let's not be judgmental for sex workers and people who are just liberated and want to go into do whatever they want, right? In this postmodern deconstructionist crap that Ryan talks about. Well, before the cast, Ryan and I were chatting a little bit, and whenever I bring it up in session, I in couples counseling or individual counseling, particularly with men, and this is a new thing for me because I've only recently found my voice with it. That I say, how's the porn consumption, right? And it's like the eyes go down, or they stare straight back at me with big pie plate sized, eyeballs. And then there's a big pregnant pause in the conversation. We do the same thing with economics too. We don't ask, hey, how are your finances? We should be, right? Because that's often the source of conflict and stress in people's lives. But for those who don't know, I work a lot with the firearms community, and I've taken to asking when somebody gets a little too angsty, a little suicidal, a little too on edge. I'll go, hey, how do you store your firearms? I don't ask if they own guns. I ask how you store them, presuming that they own them. And if they say, no, I don't own guns, I go, fine, we move on with the conversation. But if they do, then I have a conversation about where they're stored and how. Similarly, I'll just ask, how's your porn consumption? Presuming that they do consume porn. If they say, I don't, I go, all right, fine, we move on. But it's so prevalent, to Leslie's point, that we can't afford to ignore it. We can't afford to pretend that it doesn't exist. We must address this because it's probably driving a wedge in between the couple or in between the individual you're treating and everything else in his or her life. So something to keep in mind. Be bold and be courageous when you ask that.
Yeah, kind of building off something you said earlier, Jake, about how, we talked about porn as a status fantasy. It's also, like you said, an intimacy substitute. And it's such a tough thing if you're asking a man to repair his marriage that seems irredeemably broken, or a younger man say, hey, go out, meet a woman, take a chance, ask her out. You might get rejected. It's going to be super anxious. And then you're going to have this uncomfortable process of getting to know her. And then you might have intimacy. Whereas if I win, even if it's a fake win, I feel like I'm winning every time with this. And it's a tough ask for a lot of people who are so afraid of that real intimacy.
Yeah, well, it's a huge one, right? And there is a sense, I think I say in the book, that dealing, sort of being willing to risk rejection is the entry ticket to playing the game of love. Right? That is like a core masculine principle. And you're just like, screw it, I'm going for it, right? And just building that part of you in doing that. But the way to do it, and this is kind of the core of a lot of Mark's content around that, is you have to have, separate from status, this core of a sense of dignity, that I am worth sacrifice, I am worth pain, I am worth risk. And if you have that and are centered in it, and as Christians, we've got a leg up on the whole dignity thing. It's the core of what we believe as Christians. But if we sort of weaponize that and use that, that is what you can set against the honest appraisal that, hey, my status in this area that I care about is low, but bring it on. I'm going to try again.
That's cool. I like that. I teach a lot of, distress tolerance through neurological conditioning, through emotional endurance, right? If you can tolerate an emotion, your brain knows you can do it again, bigger, deeper, whatever. But I like the idea that personal integrity can confront that. You're already pre-telling yourself, almost as an inoculation against the inevitable bad conclusion. You're like, no, I'm worth enduring this. I think that's a really cool narrative.
That's what I found to be that's the big monster at the bottom of the well that I found when it comes to porn addiction, is that most guys, they only have a conditional sense of worth. like I was saying, it's like they view themselves as this empty trophy case, and their value is entirely dependent upon how many points they can score and trophies they can earn and stuff inside of themselves. And so as long as you are viewing yourself that way, then it's inevitable. You're never going to be on top of the world in all things at all times. Even if you seem to others like you are, you're either going to be afraid of losing status or you're going to lose it. And if you don't have something solid and separate from that, a sense of dignity, a sense of worth that is transcendent, and you can't prove that you have dignity. You have to choose to believe it. It's a fundamental act of will. It's a philosophical stance on life. But once you have that, then you can say, all right, I don't need to score points through work or women or whatever in order to be good enough. I am good enough fundamentally, period. And my only job is to reflect that goodness in the things that I do. Like, status still matters. It has a big impact on your life, but you just want to make sure that you're coming at it from a radiant place where you're already good. And you just want to create congruence between that goodness and the way that you show up in the world, rather than as this like vacuous black hole where you're just, you turn yourself into a vampire. Like that's what porn is. It's this little vampiric act where I'm going to take advantage of this person's, sexual status and suck it into myself so that I can feel better. And like, that's what so many toxic relationships are built around. And until you get that dignity down in your core and you learn how to work with that, then you're kind of screwed.
That's so
what's
hard.
really interesting is as you're speaking about that, Mark, I was thinking about the sort of the archetypes around this. And on the one hand, you have this largely male consumption base, which has women in it as well. And then on the other hand, you have this largely female performer base, which has men in it as well. But you see these overrepresentations of the male and the female in these two spaces. The one side, as you're putting it, is in a status fantasy or a status delusion. The other one is in an attractiveness fantasy or an attractiveness delusion. Like there's
Which is just another kind of
both
status.
sides. Yeah. Well, I mean, I would maybe it's a semantic argument, but I would say that there's a difference there. That a lot of the women who are lured into this kind of work or who are attracted to this kind of work are doing it because they feel good when they're getting a certain kind of attention, and it's affirmation of their physical desirability, because that's what they think is important about them. So I'm just speaking to the male-female archetypes here and thinking that that's interesting to notice.
Well, the way that I see it is that like it's men and women, they have different reproductive agendas, right? Like for a woman, like if you're going to bring it down to the base biological level, like when she's looking for a man, what she's looking for in him in part is someone who could be a good protector and provider. Like that's how they're wired, because, when women are pregnant, particularly in a hunter-gatherer society, they need to be taken care of to some degree, or else they're going to have a really hard time. And so like women, I think, are primarily attracted, particularly like to the, you can speak to the rise of OnlyFans. Yeah, I think they get an ego hit from, being sexually validated, but I think really what attracts them is the money. They like the resources.
I think the money's important, but I think that there's something there. I can remember being 20 and working in a bar in San Antonio. It was kind of an upscale bar, and we had councilmen and business owners and stuff in there all the time. And the owner of a big strip club left me a $50 tip and invited me to come work for him. I found that incredibly flattering. I actually did. As a 20-year-old girl, it was like, oh, I have all these flaws and I am insecure about my looks, but this guy thinks I am so hot that he thinks that people would pay to look at me. If I hadn't had a really good relationship with my father,
if there was no money involved, would it have hit the same?
Yeah. I think that it was about affirmation on a biological level of my worth as a person, because women, and not all of them, but a lot of them, that is enough right there, full stop.
Do you feel good if you get catcalled by a hobo?
By a hobo?
Do you feel sexually
I don't know anymore. I mean, I'm almost 50, so I could
I'm
really
saying back
care
then,
less.
like typically women, they like if
probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just any kind of validation. It's like a little pep in your step. I think that it's a positive. I think people want to hear that people think that they're attractive. And I think it's especially seductive for women. And the thing that made a full stop on that kind of, on the catcall from the hobo or the invitation by the strip club owner, is that I love my dad and my dad loves me and I have a lot of respect for my family and I want to be respected within my family. So that's not, there's a limit on how tempting that is. But there's a part of you that I think a lot of people can relate to that wants affirmation of that sort. Tell me I'm
I-
pretty.
It's a both and, right? Like if you're, I don't even care if there's money involved. If you got a bunch of subscribers, like I don't, but it's more than one, right? Then I go, people like what I have to produce and I'm going to produce more, right? For whatever it is, noggin notes or videos or whatever. If there's money attached to it, if you're a woman seeking the protection, but in an opulent society where you don't have to fend yourself off from saber-toothed tigers, that money stands in as a substitute for the protection otherwise provided by a male. And this is like this fourth wave feminism stuff that we're hearing about with like, you don't need no man, just get some resources. It's like, yeah, that's actually an argument of merit. I reject it, but it resonates because it's like, well, I am an island, right? I am my own person. Do you, that whole motif. So it's a both and. I think if you're getting both, that's like, man, that's super powerful. If you're getting one or the other, equally powerful to the insecure person who doesn't have a confident sense of self.
Jake, I'd love to have a longer conversation with you about how, and Ryan and anybody who wants to have this conversation, but about how the mental health field is conceptualizing healthy sexuality right now.
It's
Because,
not.
you spoke to that briefly, but in my human sexuality class in a graduate counseling program, we were basically told, expect everything. Here's all the things. Here's all the fetishes. Here's all the everything. And just be prepared to roll with it. That's all. That's all. My teacher told a story about how, and I think I told this story on a conversation with you, Ryan. So please don't clip them and put them side by side because I don't want to be known for this terrible story. But she told us a story about a client of hers that told her he was doing scat porn. And about how she had to hold back laughter. And her lesson to us was, don't laugh at your clients, support them. That was the lesson. It wasn't about, oh, what does this mean for this individual? How can we go deeper into all the things that must be at play for a person to come to this point in their life? And how do we think about that as
Can I
clinicians?
say something to you?
Yes.
To you professionals on behalf of your industry. I gotta
plug your ears.
Right. I just have to say this, like, there should not be room in the market for me and Mark.
Keep doing what you're doing because you're paying my bills, to be honest.
For what? Would you say you're in the market for what?
You guys have money
For the
you
coaches.
have whole industries around studying this and great methodology, real scientific methodology, going in, trying to help people solve these problems, understand relationships. And there are these gaping blind spots to the point where someone like me who just knows about software can write
We've
a
just
book
chucked it all out the window. Yep.
about like male-female dynamics based on what I've seen, what I've learned from Mark, what I've learned from some people off the beaten path, and like do better. And that should not be.
I'll
It
say
gets so much
Giff,
worse.
I
It
have-
gets so much worse. You guys,
Yeah.
I mean, Leslie and Ryan know this because they endured it. But guys, talking like we talk gets you outcast. We are excommunicated from our peer colleague groups. I am not welcome anywhere because I say things like this, like, hey, let's pop the hood and check the belts and hoses and see what's making you do the thing, because this seems aberrant and probably life interfering. No. Affirmation culture has gone so far into the tank that we now, I mean, you've heard of harm reduction, right? It's like, don't actually cure the addicts who are falling apart on the street. Just make them not dead. It's like, where? I mean, it's Luciferian, man. It's so bad.
In my program, my grad program, extremely sex positive. In my marriage and family counseling class, we had to read a book called The Ethical Slut, which was all about polyamory and why essentially the monogamous idea of marriage is outdated, and you should kind of ditch that and kind of do the work to evolve to a point where you're, you need to evolve to a point where you're polyamorous. Yeah, it's just, like y'all were saying, like the counseling therapy profession has completely discredited itself. That's why there's coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and it's frustrating to me because like we're talking about people, even in Christian circles, going to like Christian counselors or whatever, trying to deal with stuff in their marriage. And it's like, we're going to talk about spouses and relationships and intimacy,
Partners.
and partners, but we're not going to talk about masculinity and femininity. We're not going to talk about the way that female sexuality is responsive to a strong male initiation and all that are just part of our biology. And we're ignoring male-female dynamics when we're trying to counsel people about marriage. And
The counseling profession has lost the plot. It's totally lost the plot. I consider myself a reformer from outside the profession. I don't have a license. I work as a coach. I have education in clinical mental health counseling, but I have so many problems with that profession. And if you want to see a 3-year body of work on somebody criticizing the counseling field, you can go to my YouTube channel because I've been doing it
It's
incessantly.
phenomenal.
And this is just one of the areas. The failure to define what healthy sexuality looks like is just, it's crazy to me. We can only define it by consent. It's a consent-based sexual morality, and we have that being taught from the applied psychology field down through education. It's all
And
that our
that's
kids are
eroding.
being steeped in.
And that's eroding because you've
Consent.
got MAPS.
Oh,
Minor
yeah.
attracted persons is becoming an emerging thing where you can just go ahead and take advantage of
Right.
children because children
Right.
can consent now, right? It's like, wow.
Dropping
I mean,
the
it is,
age of consent. Yeah.
it's
this-
I
so
wanna-
bad.
I want to
You guys
give.
can't-
Oh,
you
sorry, go
won't-
ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, like, I mean, you're not going to be able to reform it because, like, the reality is you guys have ideological capture and then it's getting in the realms of religion, philosophy,
You
and
can
politics.
absolutely reform it. It's called the free market. Deregulate it. I think it
Well,
needs to be
okay, yes.
radically deregulated.
If you
and we need to
deregulate-
go back
There's a
to
monopoly.
you choose
Yeah,
who
but
your coach or your counselor is. You can call yourself a counselor. There are plenty of charlatans that you're going to see out there, but there's plenty of charlatans right now
But
with
you can't
licenses.
use your insurance. Can't use
No,
your insurance.
and you
so you're-
shouldn't. And I agree with, I
That's
think
a hot
that's a whole
take.
nother topic. I think we should, I think the use of insurance
should be
for
illegal.
for preventive care is crazy. I think insurance means in case of, it should be catastrophic, and we should, risk pooling makes sense. This is a whole nother topic.
We
Don't
need
even
to
get
do
me
a
started.
podcast
I build
on
this,
ins-
Ryan. We
I
do.
built
There's-
insurance for 11 years, but I think insurance doesn't have a place in the mental health field. There is way too much data collection. It is skewing the way that providers code and bill and diagnose guns.
Mental. I want to get us back on. I wanted to get us back on
On
the porn
porn.
topic. Yeah, and I have kind of a hot take, a spicy take, and it's more about how it's affecting society at large. And I haven't fleshed out my thoughts here, and so I'm wondering if y'all don't want to comment on this, then you don't have to. But I've had a number of guys come to me with struggling with pornography addiction, and then at some point we'll be having a casual conversation. And it's like, okay, well, like what kind of podcast you listen to? And it's whatever, Fresh and Fit, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And I'm seeing some kind of like connection between pornography and red pill culture, where it's like over here I'm jerking off
yeah.
to women, and over here women are cheating whores. There's some connection there that I haven't quite figured out yet.
It's that split brain thing.
there's
I
I
know
think
it
it's
is.
that split. It's nihilism. There's no point in having a realistic relationship with women because it's all going to fail anyway. She's going to take you to the cleaners and steal your kids from you, and you're going to lose in the divorce. She's going to cheat on you. They're all lying whores. Anyway, so just use them when they're putting themselves out there, and then you don't need them. You don't need a relationship with them.
That's that Andrew Tate mechanism of it masquerades as alpha, but really it's beta. There's not one whiff of alpha masculinity coming from people like Andrew Tate.
It's lack of
he's
control.
a complete fraud,
Yeah.
right? It's lack of discipline, right? So what happens is I think people buy into this because they're insecure, because they're young, they don't know who they are, and it gives them something to hold on to. This is not at all dissimilar from the trans activist culture, where exploring insecure children get offered an identity path, and it looks attractive because it seems strong, right? It's got a strong presence and a strong voice, but it's rooted in nothing. It's totally empty. But the kids gravitate to it because it's flashy and strong, and it's surrounded by some buzz, right? And before they know it, they've anchored themselves to it, but not in an authentic way that means anything, not in something bigger than they are. And so what ends up happening is you get these shadow projected identifications onto everybody else's shadow projection, and you end up walking through a fun house where nobody knows who they are, and their only identity is reflected in that which is reflected back by somebody else. And it's very, very crazy. And it's really hard to navigate. And I see that going on whatever we call the cultural right, I guess. And so it's yet another version of postmodernism that I think James Lindsay touches on this when he's talking about the woke right. It's like, it's postmodern deconstructionism, but in a different form where nothing means anything. There is no anchor. There is no truth. Everything is a construct of a construct, except it's in this strange masculine, alternative masculine form, right? Instead of the woke left, denigrative form. It's very bizarre. But I think that's the quickest explanation, is that it's just easier to make stuff up, and you can become God of your own universe and not submit to anything bigger than you, because you're shirking accountability either way.
I disagree with both of you.
Please do, because I love having my mind changed.
So I think that the rise of the red pill stuff on the right was fundamentally because they were sold a bunch of crap. Like, they were taught, be like a nice little good boy, like, let the feminists lead, sit back, and that's the way you're supposed to be. That's what's going to let you get ahead in life. Problem was, that just got every guy friend zoned. Okay. Like, it got him no attention from women. And who he saw getting attention from women were the jocks, were the jerks. You know, we see women drooling over the asshole, right? Like, there's some truth
Speaking
to it.
of porn.
Right? If you reject the red pill totally, like, you're completely missing out on like what actually works today. Like, you know, a guy who goes the red pill route, he's gonna get more attention from women than the guy who doesn't. Now, I'm not saying that's good. They don't have everything. Like, there is absolutely like this gross shift into just turning women into punching bags and hating them. But what I think's happening there really is that they feel their own powerlessness in relation to women. They feel their addiction to pornography, and they think that, oh, it's these hoes, it's these sluts, it's these, you know, these women, it's their fault, right? They're to blame for their behavior, and which is causing me to act this way, right? They're misplacing what the real issue is. And like, the problem on all sides right now is that there is not a healthy mainstream view of masculinity. All right. We're moving, I think, a little bit towards it. Like, for example, the thing I would point to say that is that the concept of a simp is a pejorative now. Right? You're like being like a little weak boy who's always trying to like suck up to women. That's viewed as a negative now. Whereas before, that was considered, oh, that's charming behavior. Keep behaving like that. That's what all the feminists would say, because that whole agenda is about power over men in many ways. And so, like, you have to see that there is something fundamentally true in the red pill movement, but there is absolutely corruption as well. There is a lack of values. There's a lack of championing the family. There's a lack of seeing chastity as a good thing. And I think that's the worst thing, is like, anytime, like, I went to Catholic school my whole life, and until college. And like, anytime we'd have a chastity speaker come in, they're always like these squeaky clean Mickey Mouse people who are just like, oh God, I don't want to be like you. Okay. Like, that's not cool. Like, if you were not like I remember in 7th grade, if like you weren't jerking off, you were like a nerd. Okay. With this shift where like simping is bad. Okay. Well, porn use is ultra simping. Like, you're literally like, in hunter gatherer terms, you're like sitting in the bushes, beating off, watching the alpha caveman bang the chick that you're attracted to.
Wow.
Yeah, you're cucking yourself 100%. So like, what I want to see is an actual progression and an evolution of the red pill space that embraces the strength of masculinity, but it takes it a step further where, like, you know, being a gooner, like being a porn user, it's worse than being a nerd. Like, it is a sub-masculine behavior. We should be right to be reviled. Revile that sort of thing. Now, we got to be gentle, because we're still at a tipping stage. A lot of people, like myself, my generation, we went into the internet age. No one knew what the heck was happening. We all got hooked before we knew how bad it was, right? Like, we had drug education. Here's what happens if you do heroin. Here's what happens if you do XYZ. No one gave us anything about that. With porn, best I got was like, you're going to probably go to hell. It's like, okay, well, I don't know if I buy you on that one. And so you use it because it feels good. But like,
it's not illegal like drugs were. And,
right.
Mark, I know you said this was going to be a disagreement, but I don't find anything
I'm not
to
hearing a
disagree
disagreement.
with.
Yeah, you're saying it
you guys wrote off the red pill. And
No,
Well,
I
but
didn't write off
but
the red
now,
pill. I
well,
wrote
in
off
their
that
defense,
one
Yeah.
aspect of it. I describe
never
what I
saying it was
see
all
as that.
bad.
No,
in
I
their
don't think it's all
defense,
bad.
like the red
Okay.
pill, to get the red pill that's really focused on masculinity and self-improvement, you kind of have to read the books. You kind of have to go on Reddit or whatever. If you see just what is branded as the red pill on like Twitter trolls, it's just pure like pure women hate like everywhere. So
I think it's the same way.
is
Yeah, but
Like,
kind of
red
like
pill,
a core to
red
it that
pill
a lot of the
also like
average person doesn't encounter.
I
it
had a
goes into
couple of
lowercase
interviews.
libertarianism too.
I interviewed a woman who calls herself an ex-feminist, and then I interviewed another woman who has and I think you interviewed Dr. Danny Sulikowski,
love
Ryan,
her.
also.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a really neat person and she's really intelligent, and she's got these theories of reproductive suppression and how women are contributing to negative societal trends. And in I had a couple of videos that just went really big, just got a ton of attention, and it attracted a whole lot of really nasty sentiments. So suddenly my whole YouTube is overrun with people saying things like, I hope they lock all you women in the camps, and when they take you down, I'll be there laughing. Like just like crazy stuff. Like women are all whores, they're worthless. It's just and it was a real window into this negative side of things. But I don't have the illusion that that's all the red pill is. I think that
Yeah.
it is. I think it is a struggling movement. I think there's something in the Andrew Tates that resembles a get rich quick scheme. Like
Yes.
you can skip the growth that it would take to become a man by just putting on all the trappings of man and going around speaking really loudly. And then that's gonna take the place of the growth that it would take to actually become an adult. I mean, being a man is hard work. It's hard to become a man. I have so much respect for strong masculinity. I think it's the thing that it is perhaps the most powerful force in human nature. Well, next to maybe motherhood. I don't know. It's a tough one, but it's so important. But we have all these ways to avoid it, like kind of like what Giff was saying about repressing the work that you need to be doing. I think we have a ton of ways to avoid the work that it takes to grow. And I see the red pill as men trying to figure it out.
Well, it's a different form of instant gratification, and we're saturated in instant gratification culture. I mean, 25 years ago, when I graduated college, we didn't have any of the stuff that we have today in the form of door delivery, streaming services. I mean, like it's everywhere, and so it's culturally conditioned us. It's introjected us to think that everything should be that way, including growth, right? And so we don't have any discipline. We don't have any distress tolerance. This is why I harp on emotional functioning. If you can tolerate emotional distress, you can tolerate a lot, right? So we don't have any of that stuff. So they're just preying off the instant gratification culture as I see it, and porn is part of that. And so to Mark's point about the AI stuff, it's probably going to put us out of business too, unless we can be authentic. And right now, a lot of therapists aren't authentic. Porn isn't authentic, right?
I think.
It's flash and
Oh,
pizzazz.
go ahead,
I'm
Leslie.
not sure if the AI thing is that's interesting, and I didn't weigh in on that, but I think that when I said I have compassion for everybody in this circuit, the one player I don't have any compassion for is the porn producers, the makers, the porn industry, and the companies that spend a ton of money gathering very individualized data on their users and creating products to keep you hooked at that screen longer and longer and earlier in your life and for more of your life. And I think that AI is going to present a huge challenge to those people. And I think they're going to fight back. We're going to see, I don't know how it's going to transform, but I think that there's going to be more to the story than just it all goes to tech and data. I think we're going to see some weird
They're
things
just going to
happen.
buy the tech.
I
What's
don't
that?
know. I think that there's going to be more to it. I think there's always a market for the person who knows that what's happening is real on the other end. There's something in that's
But what if you can't tell?
I don't know. I think that it'll be more. I think there'll be
feel like
more to
I've
the
seen this
story,
movie.
more complexity. Yeah.
So
We're going to lose a lot of people.
yeah.
No,
Last
I'm serious.
question. Yeah, I believe you. Last question I want to close with is essentially, what's the solution? How do we fix this? And I'll give you mine before I hear yours. And mine is on the laptop and all of my devices. I have a porn blocker called Covenant Eyes on this laptop that I'm recording on, as well as my phone. And I recommend that to all the guys that I work with. But I'm curious to hear your solutions.
Mm. You want to hear solutions or opinions on porn blockers?
Either, yeah.
I do not have porn blockers on any of my devices. And I have a surprisingly negative view of porn blockers, I guess, in that I found, particularly in Christian circles, that's kind of, step one
Yeah.
in the recommendation. Oh my gosh, got to get that. And what I consider that to be like is if, say, you took people on a adult swim class, like adults who don't know how to swim, and you put them in the
How
pool.
adult are we talking?
We're
I'm just kidding.
not that kind of adult class, but adults who are trying to learn how to swim. And you said, well, the first thing we need to do is give all of you arm floaties. Like you just got to always have your arm floaties, and maybe sometime in this swim class, at some point in the future, we could possibly think about you not having arm floaties. That's not the way they do it. That's not the way you learn. And what happens is guys who have those things, they will relapse, and they'll say, "Why did you relapse?" Oh, well, because there was this new iPad that didn't have Covenant Eyes on it yet, and blah blah blah. And it's like they're not even thinking on the landscape of what this problem actually is. They're not even playing the game, at least in a lot of Christian circles. That this is about building masculinity. This is about going on a rite of passage into manhood, and you have to be primed everywhere. And so I may be overly negative towards these things, but I'm overly negative because it allows Christian communities especially to assume that they have a solution when they're not playing the game. And the game is the rite of passage into being a modern man.
I will say, like, for my like alcohol and drug recovery, I try to work a program such that no matter what the circumstances are, I can stay sober through all of it. However, I also don't spend any time just hanging out at bars or with people smoking pot. You know what I mean? I feel like it's the same thing. Like, there's obviously a lot of inner work that I need to do, but the porn blocker is just one barrier that I give myself.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't want to give my opinion just yet. I just want to validate what both of you are saying. I think there's a both and. But to Giff's point, I'm not a big fan of outsourcing accountability. And I don't want to make that sound like it's denigrative, because it also helps, right? It's like, I'm not a fan of psychotropic medication. However, I know that sometimes it's required to ameliorate symptoms until behavioral change can take effect, right? Knowing when to pull off so that you're not outsourcing your accountability to the external device is key. And that's individual as anybody. So I think you're both right on this. I just wanted to weigh in with my opinion.
Yeah, they're a great tool. They're like, that's it. I mean, they're useful to an extent because they can create they can block unexpected triggers, and they can give you a second to get your head on straight. Problem is, if you view it as a solution, it's absolutely not a solution. And at the end of the day, you can find a way to relapse. Some guys even make a game out of relapsing with porn blockers. So it's like that. It's nice, definitely have it for your kids.
Right. That's who you have arm floaties for the kids, so that the adults can relax. That's their purpose.
Yeah, I don't know about porn blockers. I think I kind of hear good points being made all around about them. So I don't have much of an opinion on that one. I largely tend to agree with Giff that ultimately you need self-accountability. You need to develop that ability for yourself and not rely on a crutch. But I can also see that there might be a place for it in that work, in getting there. I think that, oh gosh, I do think that there's been a lot of resistance to like age verification laws by porn industry folks. I think that one of the major problems right now is the age of exposure being so young, that kids are getting exposed way before, when they're still very sexually naive and don't even have a sense of what their sexuality is. And you'll hear sexologists that are apologists for the porn industry saying that this is actually good because it educates them. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm a mother of 4. I have 2 little boys. Do not show my kids that is a sexual abuse of children to show little boys, little girls, really graphic sexual content. We're not talking about a naked woman. We're talking about really graphic sexual content that they're accessing way before they're ready to understand what they're seeing, and it warps them and damages them. So age verification would go some way. I would love to see some more protections from people in terms of how much porn is on the internet. I don't know what that could look like. I did go to law school, but I don't have a sense of the whole legal field around pornography. But I do think that a big important step is conversations. That's one of the like, I feel like I'm going to fall into like leftist territory talking about raising awareness and normalizing. But so I'm sort of allergic to that jargon.
On the right, we're anti-awareness. Let's be oblivious.
No awareness.
Keep your eyes shut.
Yeah. But I do think that it's something that it's incredibly prevalent and yet pretty taboo for people to talk about. And I think it's good that we can have more open conversations about concerns and what is concerning and what it looks like from different perspectives. Like we have this male perspective, we have this female perspective, we have everything in the middle, the engineering perspective. I see you have this book, Ryan.
Yes.
Excellent book by Gary Wilson.
Great.
Gary Wilson's excellent.
Who actually was hounded to death and committed suicide due to harassment from porn industry people. But that's another topic. So, yeah. I mean, you're up against something really big when you fight this stuff. And, but I think talking about it more, talking about the concerns, not being afraid to sound like a prude or like a, chastity person like Mark was talking about, just talk about it. Like, why are we concerned about it? And talk with your kids about it really young. I mean, age appropriate levels, but watch their social media. Don't let them have phones. Don't let them have unfettered access to the internet. And once you start allowing some of that, prepare them for what's out there and help them understand and open those dialogues with them. Tell them that this is not healthy. So I think more talking is the way to normalize concern about porn instead of normalizing porn and sex positivity.
I want to go next because Mark's, as far as I'm concerned, the expert on this panel, and he's been doing it the longest. So I agree, Leslie, that more conversations are good. And yes, it does sound soft and fluffy. But I've seen over the last 7 years that I've been involved with Walk the Talk America, the guns and mental health discussion has evolved because we were compelling conversations. No one thought it was possible in 2018 when Mike founded the organization. I joined up in 2019 as the very first firearms owning therapist to talk about it. And we wanted to bridge the gap. That's our phrase, bridge the gap between firearms ownership and mental health care. And you know what? It's worked. And we've had people change their minds on both. I hate the sides thing, but both sides of this thing. I think it's possible here too. But we have to start having people like us on the screen having more frequent, louder, more well-advertised, bold conversations that don't sound like they're bold, and just be non-attached. Speak truth. Truth binds and resonates and penetrates with people, and you can't escape it. And the truth is, this shit ruins people. And it's addiction for profit industry, just like pot. Big Pot is doing the same thing with its packaging for, gummies in the form of, trolley gummy worms and Cheetos, and they're trying to hook people earlier and earlier. They know this. It's an open secret. We can't make it a secret. So I think conversations, but the direct frontal assault has to be intimacy. We have to be intimate with our children. We have to be intimately involved in their lives. We cannot outsource education to the schools exclusively because the schools will infuse it with all sorts of weird, corrupting things. We have to monitor their activities. We have to keep them off social media. We ourselves as adults and parents have to keep ourselves off of our devices to model the proper behavior, not just do the do as I say, not as I do thing. We have to connect properly with our employees and our mentees and our proteges. With each other, with our spouses. And as men, we have to lead with examples. We have to lead by showing what it's like to be vulnerable and intimate in an alpha way, a true alpha way. As women, I think they have to be nurturing and caring in a way that says, I care about you deeply enough to be concerned about the things you're involved with, right? So that the little boys and the little girls don't seek their love and attention and affection in negative areas and in toxic relationships, right? They need their parents. The parents need to be a unit. At Zephyr, we have a disclaimer on the intake packet that says, we don't do fix my kid, right? It doesn't read like that, but like we say, as parents, you're going to be involved in this care because as go you, so go the children in your home. You can't just drop them off. It's not jujitsu. So we have to return the nuclear unit in the family to what it should be, and it always was until 50 years ago. That's what we need. We need intimacy, and intimacy is driven by vulnerability, and vulnerability requires risk. Risk of what? Pain. And if you don't think you can tolerate pain, you're just not going to be interested in vulnerability. So we have to coach ourselves into believing that we can endure pain, we can endure distress, we can do great things, we can do hard things, and in so doing, show the next generation that it's possible, so that they don't get tempted into this instant gratification black hole.
As a homeschooling mom and a technophobe, I 100% agree with what you're saying, Jake.
I didn't know you were I homeschooled for 10 years growing up, Leslie. That's really cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I homeschool my sons. Yeah,
That's neat.
they're largely unschooled, which sounded like some crazy hippie stuff to me when I first heard about it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
We homeschooled ours as well.
Nice.
I don't, but I hold that opinion. I think you need to teach your kids. Schools aren't doing a good job.
So my conclusion on the positive score around what we should do about this, particularly for young men. I mean, it's why I wrote the book, The Way of Men with Maids. Ryan's got a copy. And the interesting thing about this, I wrote this because I was working with married men around like reinvigorating sexuality in their marriage, sort of talking about my story and everything that came up to it. And the youth group leader at our church says, my high school boys need this now. And so I wrote the book. Mark wrote the preface to it. But one of the things I do, and this is crucial for the church to understand, is that I walk a young man through what it means to be a man, the mechanics of it, what this path looks like, what it means to be a man with a woman. And only then, after having a real clear, inspiring picture of what he needs to be doing, do I talk about sexual sin. So I have context for how this is getting in the way of what you want. And very specifically how it's doing it, not just saying that it is, but showing how it's doing it. And so that's the context we need with young men. We need to give them the vision of what their virility, what their sex drive is for, and then show how this is getting in the way of what they want.
Yeah, I love all of your guys' answers. I think that, you guys all bring a ton to the table, and I've loved listening to you. To your answer about what should be done, I guess I see it on two different levels. Like, one is at the society level, how do we make things better? And then how on the individual level to make things better. So like at the society level, I think ultimately it comes down to two things, like communicating the truth, particularly to our kids, and then having a point of view on it. So like, what do I mean? Like, same way we get drug education, here's what drugs will do to you. Well, here's what porn will do to you. Here's what it'll do to your brain. Guess what? Your dick might stop working right with a real woman if you keep using it. Like, these kinds of things. I was never given any of that, that'll make you really consider, do I want to be using this or not? So that's the truth part, but there also needs to be a point of view. And this speaks to like what Giff was talking about, is that here's what is the best way to live. Here's a better way to live, right? Like, from the Christian perspective, it's like, can we actually do something like that? And this is where I think, therapists run into an issue, is that they've got this governing body with a completely separate point of view that's holding their license hostage, right? So it's like, we need to speak loudly about a view of sexuality that I believe, aligns with our nature, with our God-given design. And if we don't champion that, we don't shout that from the rooftops, well, guess what? We've got someone out there, we got tons of people out there saying, you do whatever you want, more pleasure, the better, right? As long as everybody's consenting. And we got to say, no, that's fucked up. Like, here's what's going to happen. It's not just an opinion. Here's the byproduct of this, right? And if we can communicate that realistically, like with our kids, like just, if a kid's ready to hear about porn, he's ready for a real talk, okay? Like, you can tell him the truth. And so that's what I think needs to happen there. But then we got a bunch of people already hooked on it. So what do we do for them? Well, we got to give them a system that works fundamentally, like give them a way that reliably gets them clean. And that's just not popular enough, like that's what I've spent my whole career trying to create. And that's what I do in my work. And it does work. But I shouldn't have had to been the one to create it, right? Like this should be well known. Like this should be studied. Like we need to have real medical professionals like finding things that actually work and get to the heart of the problem. And so that guys can do what they intend to do, right? Like if they want to quit, they should be able to. And right now it just feels like it's this big amorphous blob. It's unclear. People say a million different things. And so I'm hoping that over time we can, through evolving as a society, we can figure out what really works and what doesn't.
And I just gotta plug Mark here. Like he's doing, I think, the 5th iteration of your course on quitting porn. The one that got me clean was, I think, the 1st and the 2nd is the one I went through. And this is the 5th, and he's making it all free. I mean, it costs an arm and a leg. And it's going to just be, it's available, like half of it is done now, right? At markqueppet.com, something like that.
It's like, I've got through, if you check it out, markqueppet.com, go to the guides. And like, if you go through that stuff, you'll, by the end of it, it takes a little while to learn how it all works and get everything in the right place. But then the system itself is just a few minutes a day. And then like 5 minutes a day. And then like 10 to 30 minutes once a week. And if you get that in place, most guys are gonna be able to quit, and then we got deeper layers too, if there's, people want to take it further or they need to, but
just understand, I mean, this is the best I have ever seen. I think this is the best stuff in the world, and he's releasing the best version of the best stuff in the world for free. And he didn't tell me to say this. Y'all need to hear it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I love this conversation and I appreciate you for joining me.
I'm so glad you did it, Ryan. Thanks for inviting me.